Hello out there and welcome to the Pacesetters program. When we come back from the first break, we're going to be talking about a disease that affects over 80,000 Americans, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. The Coalition for Pulmonary Fibrosis is doing its best to make the public aware of the disease. IPF Coalition Board Member Deirdre Roney is here to give us the results of a recent national poll on the disease and to give us an update on the big event taking place on October 22nd. Well, like it or not, folks, we have an election coming up. Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Pacesetters program. We have Deirdre Roney, board member for the Coalition for Pulmonary Fibrosis. Welcome to the program, my friend.
Thank you.
And I can't pronounce the word that precedes pulmonary. What is that?
Well, the name of the disease we're seeking to cure is idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis.
And what is idiopathic? What is that?
Idiopathic means cause unknown. Pulmonary is lungs, and fibrosis is scarring. So that's just a fancy word for saying that you have terminal lung scarring and we don't know why.
Why are you involved in it?
8 of my family members have been afflicted with the disease.
Meaning what?
My grandmother, 6 of her 6 children, and now my 35-year-old cousin. The disease is terminal. So 50% of people die within 3 years, 70% of people die within 5 years. And your lungs turn into scabs, and you can no longer breathe through scabs, and so you die.
When I was reading the material, I was shocked to find out that's only 85,000 according to surveys or whatever. And you said, Ray, it's more. But those are the figures we have to use, to be honest. But you say it's more. Why do they only say 85,000?
Well, given the statistics that I just shared with you, and given another set of statistics, which is it usually takes around 2 or so doctors to properly diagnose, and that process can take between 1 and 5 years, there must be thousands and thousands of people dying of this disease without ever knowing what hit them. Now, IPF is a very prevalent form of interstitial lung disease, but we know that even so, it's even more prevalent because those numbers are too low.
Males or females? Children, adults, what?
There's a slight prevalence for males. Most people get it in their middle ages. However, I've met people with the disease who are teens, and I've met very elderly people with the disease.
And why? Why middle ages?
We don't know. There's so much we don't know about this disease, and that's why we're trying to raise funds to cure it. We do. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you don't automatically have those scabs. I mean, it takes years for them to build up to.
We're not sure. We know very little about the disease in the early stages. It could move quickly. It could move slowly. A person can lose 70% of their lung capacity without even knowing it. So we don't know.
Thinking it's something else? Or the
not noticing that it's gone. You can run up and down stairs and feel just fine until you lose about 70% of your lung capacity.
Well, we don't want to scare anybody out there, but what are some of the symptoms?
Well, the symptoms would be fatigue. They would also be persistent dry cough, shortness of breath, and also if you are having what's called clubbing, that is the tips of your fingers being a little blue and swollen, that shows that you're not getting sufficient blood circulation.
Oh, that's the reason why when I had my lung problem, it kept looking at my fingers.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the fact that when it says something about 200 diseases. What does that mean if we're talking about one particular disease that affects the lung in terms of scar tissues, etc.? Why 200?
Well, I'm going to use that phrase again. There's so little that we know about the disease that many researchers will tell you that these different iterations or forms of fibrotic scarring might, in fact, once we learn enough, be related to each other, be different things along the same path. They just don't know. So we need to raise funds to find a cure and to understand why it happens. There are a lot of end stages. Lupus end stages are pulmonary fibrosis. Arthritis end stages, pulmonary fibrosis.
And also the environment where you work, etc. Those are basic. I should say basic stages, but those are I would consider stages for possible
well, there's 2 things that contribute to probably any disease, and certainly this one, a certain amount of genetics and a certain amount of environment. We know that 10 to 20% of people...
What percentage genetics?
10 to 20% of people with IPF report a genetic history, but again, we know that number's too low because we know doctors aren't answering full history. Then, of course, there must...
What does that mean, full history?
They're not asking, did your family have this before? Has anyone else in your family died of emphysema or bronchitis or a heart problem or anything that might look or feel like this disease? Doctors aren't really doing that well enough yet.
Well, you talk about this. I'm going to show your phone number too, okay, while we're talking about it. Let's talk about some of the environment. I was telling you my dad worked in the coal mines. He worked for Santa Fe Railroad, which means he had to clean out some of the cars, the little locomotives. He had to literally clean the dust, et cetera, et cetera. Presents a problem, right, for the lungs.
Exactly, and this is why I think idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, IPF, we are the canary in the mine. As the air gets more polluted, as you're exposed to more things in the environment, people with a genetic predisposition will be the first to show it, but eventually larger numbers of people will follow along with this disease. So we think it's very important to find out what causes this disease, because what we experience with a sensitivity towards it, other folks, as things get worse environmentally, may find themselves experiencing the same thing.
And you stated that they could, they might have scarring of the tissue, but they could die like my father did of the Hong Kong flu.
Correct, because your immune system is compromised, and so you are more susceptible to dying from things that attack your body that your body is not able to defend itself against.
One day I got to have you on so we can spend more time on this, but you have a big event coming up.
Yes. We are doing the BIG, Breathing is Glorious, Butterfly Ball, the Coalition for Pulmonary Fibrosis. That's our nonprofit. We're the largest one in the country dealing with IPF, is partnering with UCLA, which has one of the top idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis centers in the country. We are simultaneously doing another event in Chicago, partnering with the University of Chicago. The goal, of course, is to raise awareness and raise funds to cure the disease in partnership with centers of excellence around the country.
We got 15 seconds. Why hasn't this been done before?
If you have cancer, you can do a cancer walk. If you have this disease, you can't walk across the room. So it takes people who care about those with a disease to step forward and advocate on behalf of them.
I thank you so much for being on the program.
You're welcome.
7 minutes went by so quickly. We have to have you on again. Thank you so much for being on the program. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, when we come back, we're going to be talking about Proposition 75.